Hello, hello, hello. I am back and welcome to Zero Hour, where you can barely see me. Welcome to Zero Hour. My name is Oishik, and this is the first episode, US Elections 2020. And the previous video was Zero Hour's premiere about the elections. And 0 hour is going to talk about a lot of things, and there's going to be really no limit to what we talk about. But today we're going to talk about the elections. I've been watching, and one of the things I can say is there sure are a whole lot more racist people in the United States than I thought. I knew that they were everywhere. I mean, I grew up in Central Illinois, went to school there, went to school in Michigan, lived in Michigan, worked in Livingston County. It's one of the more conservative, not conservative really, one of the more racist counties. There's a difference between conservatism and racism. Conservatism is about being conservative, being conserving your resources and financially conservative, not spending too much, judicially conservative, not being overactive in interpreting and over-interpreting laws and making laws in the process. So that's what conservative is, and what racist is well, prejudicial. This idea of supremacy based on race, or, in this case, it's race. It's the white male, the white man. And I mean, that's what's being shown in the elections. And it's, the people are talking about it and the pundits are talking about it. And what I can say right now, by the way, let me just go to the numbers really quickly so I can keep updated. As it stands right now, PBS, which follows the AP election results, has announced that the electoral vote count is 238 for Joe Biden and 213 for the incumbent. And according to the New York Times, the numbers that the states that are up, still, up, we don't know who won in those states, is Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And the margins are, variable. So we'll whenever one of those flips, I'll be sure to, update. I'm going to hang around here for about an hour and talk about this election and what I'm seeing and what this is showing, and what people, ABC, NBC, and all these stations have been talking about in terms of demographic. The demographic shift of the nation and how divided the United States is. I honestly don't think that it's as divided, any more divided than it was before. But I think that there is a very moment, this ultimatum, or this moment of truth that has arrived, both for race issues as well as for gender issues, because the demographic has shifted in a way where the majority of non-white people are voting Democratic, and the majority of white males are voting Republican. White women are also gravitating towards the Democratic Party, and also, but I mean, conventional wisdom would say that, well, I mean, white men are just one demographic. It's up against women of color, white women, minorities, the entire African American bloc, the Hispanic X bloc, all these. How is it that the white male is? It's it's the urgency of their fear that they're losing their primacy in the world, which is kind of true. Uh, but I mean, the fact that that primacy or that auspice of primacy itself is untrue is lost on them, But that's what they're guarding. And when you're a cornered animal, when you are dwindling stock, what happens is that you become overprotective of it. So the turnout is that much more for that demographic, and that's generational. Masculinity, preservation of white male masculinity in the United States has a history. There's a history of it. You go back to Jack Johnson and Jim Jeffries, the heavyweight boxing championship game that happened at the turn of the 20th century, that kind of, put the whole masculinity, male dominance, white, black dominance paradigm and flipped it on its head. And, we've sort of been in the whirlwind of that for the last 100 years. And we're just now, this is the culmination of that, and now we're seeing that the more progressive side of the American demographic is gravitating left towards the Democratic base. However, because there is this overarching idea that America is an ever broadening and emergent social experiment, that urgency of survival that the white male has, and which the incumbent has quite loudly and quite desperately brought out by show of the machismo and the je ne sais quoi, I don't care attitude. And, it's that's what's at display here. The actual competitors in this election is the white male dominance paradigm and the New World paradigm, which gravitates out of that superiority, prejudicial, imperial idea, and even the post-colonial and pre-antebellum American ideology that white male property is the only vested right that matters. I mean, that's also the backbone of the originalist ideology, which Justice Scalia was a big fan of, and now Justice Barrett is also a supporter of. So, that's what's at play here, and that's why this race is so close. And also the other reason, which I believe, and I'm saying this completely off my feeling after watching this happen over the last 24 hours, is that the 18-year-old to 29-year-old, as well as the extreme left progressive, a lot of them, again, not a whole lot of them, but a good amount of them have again gone into third-party write-ins, and also those, and that has caused, I mean, that's fractured the vote. And I think that the 18 to 29 demographic, they were active in protesting, they were active on social media, they're active and vocal in getting out the vote, but they have underperformed. And I think that when we go look at this election 6 months from now, we'll see that the white male demographic overperformed, So we are well over 100 and right now the number of votes counted are close to 140 million, 130, 60, 135 million votes have been counted, and there's still some to go. Good ways to go. Another 3 or 4 million votes. So I mean, it's an extraordinary number of people that voted. Probably about 150,000, 150 million people or more will be voting in this election. And I'll admit that in the previous episode I said that there's going to be a 75-25, but I didn't take into consideration what I just explained to you, which was the actual fight this election is between the white male paradigm and everything else. And when that is under threat, when anything is under threat, and it has been the ruling paradigm for over centuries, there's going to be resistance. And this swell of resistance resurged after the Obama 2008 election. And at that time, I said, and I wrote that this was going to happen, that there's always a sociological backlash of, the regressive movement before progress can take full form, because that's like the last cry or the last try, and so that's my idea of why it's been so close. And looking at the numbers again, just staying updated on the numbers. Nothing has changed drastically as yet. And I mean, the country's so big, and there's so many votes, and it has to be done properly. And I commend the fact that yesterday and today, the voting process went off without any sort of major gaffes. I'm not even going to go into commenting about the incumbents, as far as I'm concerned, bullshit about falsely lying and claiming that he won, because that's just not how the American government works. Quite simply put, if the president declares that they have won, the elections themselves are not controlled by any apparatus that is under the president's control. The election commission controls elections, and the states control the elections, and the state election commissions, because voting is a state issue. It's about states and the citizens' rights of voting. It's not about there's no federal authority in the vote, in controlling counting of the votes. The most that the president can do is take it to court. But even in those cases, there's a process that they have to take it to the Supreme Court, the state court process. And whether or not it's going to go to state court or federal court to be decided depends entirely on the law, the state law that is drafted about the election that's going to take place. So that depends also on what the law says of the state, which is specific jurisdiction to administer that law and interpret the law falls on the state courts, and the federal jurisdiction doesn't have jurisdiction over that. So now, unless there's a federal question in that case that the federal circuit at the very top of which the Supreme Court sits would have to decide upon, the case won't even make it up to the Supreme Court. And as there's news that has come out that yesterday, the Minnesota Supreme Court, dismissed one of the Republican and the Trump campaign's claim that to throw out votes or something. They're just going around the country, just randomly asking people, judges and states to just throw out votes, just because votes can just be thrown away, and just by playing Hail to the Chief at 2 a.m. in the morning in a room full of 200 people who are your sycophants and probably going to heil you at some point if you were to, in some alternative universe, win, then, then maybe you can claim that you are victorious and you'll be one of those great dictators like Charlie Chaplin, So, yeah, that's what I meant. So, you have to. There's no other president in the United States history has come out and just said, "Oh, I won," before the election was finished, before the states declared winners, before winners were called. It just has never happened, and so it's not only just crass, it's also. I'd venture to guess that it tampers with the electoral process, because he confuses the people by saying that votes are still coming in. No. Let me be clear about this. The votes that are being counted now are the votes that were cast, and the casting of the votes ended when the polls closed in the respective states and districts and whatever. So it's not about casting your vote. You cannot cast a vote anymore. Now, about the mail-in ballots. The mail-in ballots, millions and millions have already been received. And those are the ones that are being counted, and those are the ones being reported, right? Okay. Then there's a third, which are the mail-in ballots that were postmarked by November 3rd, but have not reached the states yet, the election offices yet. And whether they will be counted or not, as the Supreme Court has said in these recent elections, recent cases the last week, has said that it depends on the state law. If the state law says that they can wait for 10 days and November 13th, then they can wait. If the state law says that the ballots have to come in by election day, then that's the law. They have done what a traditional conservative Supreme Court would do and deferred to the states and exercise judicial restraint, which I think was really noble under the circumstances. And I think Chief Justice Roberts has a serious duty to hold the line with the judiciary at this point. And the only hope that if by somehow some federal question, something, it gets to the Supreme Court for certain, that the 4 justices who are reviewing it for certiorari, which is whether or not to take the case, are actually 4 justices. They traditionally happen to be the minority justices. In this case, it would probably be Kagan, Sotomayor, Breyer, and then now Richard, and now Roberts, because that's all we have left. They probably, the only hope is that they would say we're going to deny certiorari, which means that the state court or the lower court's opinion is law, because that's what's needed. If you're going to be judicially restrained with how you have operated with election law in the last week, to that end, you have to be, consistent. And so that's where I think that it stands when it comes to what the incumbent is trying to do. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. The markets are not dependent on a specific candidate. The markets, first of all, the stock market is not an indicator of the entire economy. It's a market. Think about it like a market where people go and Is the market the world? No. Like, your Whole Foods is not the world. Your Target is not the world. You know? Your Aldi is not the world. It's got a lot of shit in it from all over the world, but it's not the world. So, I mean, think about it like that. And so the markets are determined. They go up and look at stability. The more stable it is, if there's a continuity of government, if there isn't controversy or scandal, if there isn't like a wobbliness to the soundness of the American governmental apparatus, that's what they look at. It's not about the presidential candidate. It never has been and never will be, no matter what anyone says. In 2016, the markets stayed on the trajectory that they were on all the way through the Obama-Biden recovery process, and it went through because Hillary Clinton conceded and there was a peaceful transition of power. It had nothing to do with the fact that Donald Trump came into office and, you know, the markets loved him. No. I mean, it's audacious to think that that would be the case, and only somebody with an ego as abnormally large as Donald Trump would think that that would be the case. Now, because what he did at 2 a.m. in the morning, and because of the uncertainty he sowed into the news cycle, the futures tanked and markets are going to open lower. And that was bound to happen, but it's not because Biden is going to end up winning. Remember, he's already prefaced and premised and squared and sequestered all of this. If you can't see this labyrinth that he's laying out in front of us, that's been coming for the last 4 years, y'all gotta get a new job. Or if you're in politics and if you're just watching and don't know about it, you haven't been watching close enough, and you've been derelict in your duty as a citizen of the United States. My friend Steve said that, you give us too much credit. Americans just, they're not what, you give. No, I don't believe that. When I was an AmeriCorps member, we did service projects and we did mentor programs and built homes. And when I went on volunteer missions with the United Methodist Church, we went to the Appalachia and we built and we repaired homes in Appalachia. And I was everywhere, in every corner. I was, things were said to me that were, as I think about it today, they were racist and they were offensive, and at some point would be like borderline threatening. And some of the people around me were like flabbergasted that I didn't react to it as they would have reacted. For example, I'll give you an example of this, and I don't think there's any. I'm losing my train of thought, but I want to tell you the story. This is an important story, because I think we need to start thinking and understanding what this race and gender paradigm is doing to our country. And if you don't understand it, it's going to really mess up how you look at yourself, how you look at your country, how you look at your identity. And so, senior year in high school, I went with the United Methodist Church of Danville, Illinois. A group of us went to the Appalachian Mountains. I think it was the church student prayer group, and some of us were also part of Federation of Christian Athletes. And we went to the Appalachia, a big group of us, to West Virginia, to this, and we sort of camped out in this old school gymnasium for about a week or so. And we helped this family rebuild their sort of home compound, which had a few homes, and they were all dilapidated and had the money. So that's what we did. And one of the days, I remember we were sitting and we were having lunch on the porch of the guy's house we were repairing. And, I was the only non-white person who had gone. with the United Methodist Church of the Appalachia. And that was about 3 years after I had moved to the United States. And we're having dinner and having lunch, sitting there, and the guy goes, just a few. He says, just about 20 or 30 years ago, they hung a black man about, just down the street over there, down the hill over there, And then he turns to me and said, "Oh, I'm not saying that because you're sitting here or anything." And I was like, "Oh no, it's all right." And I'm just eating my, and I kept eating my sandwich, and our mentor. There are other people, a few other guys of people who went with me, and I saw their face, and I look back now, and I'm laughing about it. They were just taken aback by it. They were not. I don't know if they were scared. And at that time, I'd taken civics and history in high school, but I still hadn't gone into taking the American history major in undergrad. So I wasn't really. I mean, I knew that there was obviously a racial paradigm there, and I joked about it and thought about it. But I wasn't fearful of it because, it wasn't my people who were lynched in America. I'm from India. I was born in India. So, I mean, so that frame of reference of the terror of what that person said just didn't even faze me. And because it didn't faze me, and because I didn't look at it from the vantage point or the bias or the perspective or the herd experience, or sometimes in some places lived experiences of people of that terror, I could look at that man straight in the face and see that there was no hatred there. That there was no, I don't know if he was racist or not. Maybe he was. I don't know. But all I knew was what he was saying to me when he was saying it, when we're having that conversation. What he was saying was not directed at me. So when he said, "Oh, I'm not saying that because," he meant that. Because honestly, just before he was talking to me about that, I had just gotten out from under his trailer, and I was cleaning out what was underneath and fixing the sewer pipes. So there was no animosity there. There was no hatred there. There was just an ignorance. There was just a blissful ignorance. And he reacted to the expressions that the people around me had on their faces when he told me that he's not saying that because I was sitting there. And he was somewhat reassured. And this happened when I was 18, and that was 20 years ago. And I still remember that because I remember it was yesterday because, and of course, we kept working, and I learned so many things there when I was volunteering there. And, that experience taught me a lot of things about what America is. It taught me that, yeah, there's prejudice and hatred and bigotry everywhere, and a history of vengeance and just bad, evil, But that's not how everybody is. That's not how everybody should be framed as. And even when somebody says something that is on its face racist, or on its face could be taken as traumatic or something negative, we have to really think of being able to take ourselves out of it and see where they're coming from before we give ourselves the benefit of that doubt and take it as a personal offense. Because we can do better in understanding other people if we can understand where they're coming from. And so where he was coming from was that's where he grew up. You don't see people like me there. You know, I had no problem even after he told me that to go down the street to the grocery store, not very far from evidently where this black man had been lynched some 20 years before I had gone there. And I got something to eat, and I called my this guy that I started seeing at that time on the dial phone, which kids these days have no idea what they are. You know, I put those quarters in and talk to him. Yeah, I mean, no one knew that I was talking to my to-be boyfriend. They also didn't. Yeah, I didn't feel threatened by it. Why? Because I didn't have that historic experience running through the stories of my life. Because I wasn't prejudicial in that fear, as odd as it sounds, despite the fact that that fear is very legitimate. You know, if somebody, a black friend of mine would be sitting there, they would be mortified, terrified, offended, and they would never want to go back to that place. Especially if they grew up hearing stories from their families about the horrors of slavery and discrimination in the United States. So we're at a time in our country's life where we need to take the time to understand one another, to be able to understand the differences. Because if we don't do that, we won't be able to discern between the people who really don't mean you any offense and the people who do and who exploit those insecurities to bring you the ill effect, which I wholeheartedly believe the incumbent employs. I don't know whether he's anti-Semitic or what. I don't know, or racist. I don't know, honestly. But I do know that he can monetize and weaponize it, that he has, and that he has incited thousands of people to do things that are wholly irresponsible simply because he has been able to tap into those fears of that white male demographic. And on the flip side, the left hasn't been able to mobilize the left progressives to understand the transition of power from the moderate wing to the progressive wing has to be a transition and not a dive. Because we are seeing what the dive of the GOP has done to the GOP. And what the third party candidates and write-ins have done has effectively been to fracture the GOP anymore. Yeah, we're going to have a multi-party system, but we're going to have a multi-party system with a massive left progressive party, the Democrats, and then the Republicans with a soul, the Trump party, the libertarians, write-ins, blah-de-blah-de, blah-de-blah-de. So yeah, maybe that'll work out. But that would mean that there'll never be another Republican president, and there's never going to be another Trump party president, because the majority will be the left progressive wing. The American government has been for centuries operating on a two-party basis because it is the most reasonable one for the system of government that we have. Even electoral votes, there's a purpose to it. And there's a huge long discourse that can be had about that. But what really needs to be talked about is the manipulation of the mind by the people like the incumbent who are insistent on sowing fear, on spreading chaos, in disrupting elections by just saying careless and callous and irresponsible things and doing careless and callous and irresponsible things, like going around like there isn't a pandemic spread all around the United States. So these things are irresponsible. Right now, if you look, I'm looking at the counts. They're still the same. Effectively, their lead in Michigan, Trump's lead in Michigan is narrowing, and Biden maintains a 20,000 vote, 0.6 point vote lead in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania votes are in a standstill. North Carolina has been in a standstill for the last 8 hours. I don't know what's happening. Michigan, told you. Georgia, Trump is ahead 2 points. Arizona, Trump is ahead 5 points. These are the states that the New York Times is reporting are still hanging in the balance. PBS, which is tracking the Associated Press election results. No shift there. Biden is just about a little bit over 2 million popular votes lead. Still the same electoral vote count of 238 and for Biden and 213 for the incumbent. Now, any other developing news? Oh, well, I mean, do keep people in Nicaragua in your prayers, and also pray that Hurricane Ada is on its way. How many storms have we seen this year? 2020 is gonna fuck you up and slap you. Yeah, right? How many storms have hit the Gulf Coast? It's easy. I mean, there's some romance going on behind me. It's probably more interesting than what I'm talking about to some of you. So there you go, live for it. So yeah, looking at news right now, waiting for more election results. I don't know why they decided to wait. Maybe there weren't enough people to count the votes. Pennsylvania, too early to call, according to NBC. All right, so what else do I want to talk to you about? Yeah, we're just going to have to be patient. We're just going to have to wait. We're not going to, and had this been what Trump thought it was going to be, that, I'm going to say I declared, and everybody's going to go, oh, he declared, so it's over. No, that's not how it works. Right? That's just not how it works. The Election Commission and the states are not beholden to the federal government. So in that sense, we don't know who is the winner yet. And as it stands now, we need to be patient. We need to go home, be safe. If you're out, mask up, stay vigilant. As always, stay connected. Watch out for one another. And, I'm not going to do another one of these unless there's something major. I can say that in the first video I was wrong about the margins, but I'll say this. At the end of this episode, I'll tell you now that I believe that Joe Biden will win the presidency. I think that the margin I believe looking at the states as I'm looking at it right now, the margins of the states that Michigan is going to go for Biden, Wisconsin is going to go for Biden, Pennsylvania is going to go for Biden, and if you say no, Pennsylvania can't go for Biden, I'll give you another option of Wisconsin's going to go for Biden, Michigan's going to go for Biden, and Arizona's going to go for Biden. Any of these two combinations, or if Biden gets Arizona and Wisconsin, any of the other 4 states for Biden would tip the election in Joe Biden's favor. And in order for the incumbent to remain in office, he's going to have to win. He's going to have to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and North Carolina. He has to win a majority of those states. So there's 1, 2, 3, 6 states. Biden has to win 3 of those states to win, and Trump has to win at least 4 of them to win. I believe that Joe Biden is going to win by about 4 or 5 million votes, 5 million votes maybe. It's not going to be enough for Trump to be able to squeak in those victories that he did with Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin in 2016. In fact, that story is going to flip and then also add some more votes to Biden. That's how I feel, by looking at the areas and the counties where the votes have yet not been counted and the percentage of the demographic in those areas. They're mostly Democratic votes, and I think that's what the incumbent is going after. So, but you have to be aware, and I say this again, there has been no evidence that any of the votes are fraudulent or that any votes have been cast after the polls closed. The only votes that are taken in are the only votes that are now still being accepted by election commissions from outside are the ones that are coming in through mail and are postmarked for yesterday, before the time when the polls closed in that particular election commission. So that's how varied the situation is. And every single election commission is looking at that, and every single vote carefully. I know that mine did, because I emailed and I got a response, and I go onto the website of my state's status of my vote, my Secretary of State, and I can see that it's arrived, but it's still not been counted. It's pending. So those need to be counted, because mine got in October. Maybe mine has been counted already. I don't know. But some of them, people who put it in the mail on the 1st, on the 2nd, on the 3rd, by noon, on the 3rd by noon, or who put their ballots in the pickup locations, in the drop-off locations designated by the county officials, or the ward or precinct or parish officials. Those need to be picked up and counted. And those need to be verified. And, when the incumbent says that fraudulent this, fraudulent that, 2 people, and listen, everybody who votes has to register to vote. So everybody who votes has to provide the information of their personal information, their address, their driver's licenses, proof of identity over the course of time. And it is all recorded with the Secretary of State, with the city clerk, state clerk's office, all these places, these records, they have them. That's how they match signatures. So, and when they go in and they have to verify, they have to look now electronically, and they look at the signatures, they match the signatures, and there are people, actual people, who have to sit there and do this. So for the incumbent to say that, oh, we need to stop it now and like fuck the votes and fuck the people counting the votes, how disrespectful is that to the electoral process? Forget the legality of it and forget like any sort of coup thing. That's just disrespectful to the people who voted and the people who are counting the votes. Like, that's not how the leader of the country should behave. And you know, at the end of today, if all of my prediction and all of this good feeling goes away and this idiot gets reelected, I'll keep on saying the same damn thing. Because I'm not going to be scared by it. If he's certified winner by the election commission and the votes come in as so, then that's that. I voted for Biden, but I am okay with that. But I'm not okay with the incumbent president of the United States declaring presumptive prejudicial victory and then claiming everything that's coming in after that and being counted after that to be fraudulent. Just blanketedly fraudulent. That's what dictators do. And you know, he may be trying to be one, but the structure of American governments doesn't work that way. American government has not been thrown into question because he declared victory at 2 a.m. last night. In fact, everyone is going to be laughing at him. And everyone's going to say, yeah, okay, whatever. Keep going, let's go. And that includes people in the Republican Party. So we have to stand our ground. We have to keep on insisting the votes counted, and the vote will be counted, and the election will be certified, and we are going to have a legitimate president, whoever that is. But until that happens, that man needs to keep his mouth shut. With that, I'd like to close. Namaste, as they say. No, namaste. See, I can make fun of white people too, you know? I can make fun of white people. Man, I can make fun of white people like you would not believe, you know? In my life, I've had the amount of sex I've had with white people, it's kind of like, it's a good-sized pole. You know, it's like a fucking Winnipeg pole. And I was wrong because I must not have slept with that many Republicans. Because I thought there were definitely more Democrats in America than there are Republicans, given how many white people I slept with. Anyway, on that note, I love you all. I love even the ones who think that I'm, I don't know, beneath them. That makes me love you all the more because that makes you know, I realize that you'll get over it, either in this lifetime or next. So, catch you guys on the other side. There has been no other significant changes for me to report excitedly before I take off. So, with that, goodbye. Take care.